story begins on a Saturday morning, February 9th, 2008. It was a morning somewhat reminiscent of today's morning. It was one of those really nice Florida winter mornings where it just makes you feel so happy that you're alive. It was about 60 degrees outside, and the wind was blowing at about 11 miles an hour. The skies were sparkling blue, the air was crisp and clear, and it's just a wonderful day and a perfect day for bike riding. That's exactly what I had in mind. So I loaded my trusty carbon frame steed into the back of my minivan, and off we went to Starkey Park in Pasco County. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. They have a really nice bike path there. It's perfectly safe, about 10 feet wide, paved, and no cars are allowed. Only pedestrian type traffic, joggers, skaters, bicyclists like myself. And off I went, observing the flora and fauna all the way up to the end of the Starkey Park bike path, which then intersects with the Suncoast Trail. I turned north and headed up the Suncoast Trail, and was very happy with the way things were going. I went, I guess, about maybe 20 miles up, and turned around and decided to start coming back. And I once again came to the intersection of the Starkey Park bike path and headed back down Starkey Park bike path. I had gone, I guess, maybe about 38 miles, and I started to get a little peaked from the wind resistance, so I leaned over the rail of the bike so to cut down some of the wind resistance, but of course that cut down my visibility to the front. And I could only see about maybe 10 or 15 feet in front of me, but I wasn't really concerned about that because I was to the far right of the bike path, and I wouldn't be interfering with traffic coming in the opposite direction, and so I felt pretty comfortable with that. However, unexpectedly, someone was sitting on the bike path directly in my path of travel, and I saw him too late, and the only thing I could do was take evasive action, and I went off the bike path to the right, and to the right of the bike path is a dirt decline. It goes down about maybe 10 feet to the tree line where the preserve starts. And it's a very uneven surface. And I squeezed both handlebar brakes on my bike when I went off the bike path. And what happened was that the front wheel was making contact at a point in time when the rear wheel was not making contact with the ground. When that happens, inertia will carry you over the front of the bike, and I landed on the top of my helmet, on top of my head, and broke my neck on a C3 quad. The first two thoughts that came into my mind when I was laying there on the ground was, thank God I have my helmet on, and the second thing was, this is very bad. And I couldn't breathe. I was trying to take deep breaths and I couldn't breathe. I was just taking shallow breaths, and it was making me feel panicky. And someone came over to me right away and asked me what my name was. And I tried to vocalize my name, but I couldn't. I could only mouth it. I went, and that was it. And I was really starting to get scared. Soon thereafter, a soothing female voice said to me, I'm a nurse. Just relax, take short breaths, you're going to be fine. And that seemed to calm me down somewhat, and I did exactly as she said. I was then able to tell her where my cell phone was and my driver license was, and she was able to make contact with my wife. I must have been passing in and out of consciousness because I don't remember too much of what happened at that point. I don't know how much time it took, but the next thing I remember is I heard the helicopter landing, and then some people that looked like astronauts were tying me to a limb and putting me into the helicopter, and off we went to TGH, thank God Hospital. And when I got here, I must have again been fading in and out of consciousness because I recall a doctor saying that I had a C scan, but I don't remember that at all. But what I do remember was it seemed like I was in the middle of a crowd of people, almost like as many people as in this room here, and the doctor was standing way above me, and say, can you feel this, can you feel that, where does that tingle at? And I was telling him I had tingling sensation. Where is this, where is that? He's asking me all these questions, and I was trying to answer him as best I could. And then the next thing he said was, I want an MRI. I must have passed out then too, because I don't recall the MRI. Next thing I know, I was back in the same room with all of these people that I believe my wife and daughter, my daughters were there, but I can't be absolutely sure. And he was telling me about my need for an operation, and I think he was trying to get my consent, which I, of course, gave him. The next day, on the 10th, I was operated on by Dr. Greenberg, and I went into ICU on the 10th, and I was there on the 11th, and then finally on the, I believe the 12th, I was transferred to a hospital bed. And that was the first time I remember seeing my beautiful wife and beautiful daughter there alongside me. I was so happy. But at the same time, although I was happy, I began to realize the extent of my injuries. Yeah, and it's a devastating blow to realize that in a blink of an eye, you can go from, I think I was going to do this, hold on. In a blink of an eye, you can go from a very physically fit 67-year-old, I'm going to be 68 next week, incidentally, to a quad. It was kind of devastating, but with my wife and daughters there, I really felt pretty good. I realized at that point that this was going to be the biggest challenge I ever faced in my life. And when you come to that realization, you have to understand that when you start to take on a challenge as big as this, and believe me, I've taken on some big challenges in my life, but nothing like this one. But when you take this on, you have to consider a couple of things, and one of them is risk-reward analysis. What are the risks and what are the rewards? The rewards justify the risks. That's a no-brainer in this case. I mean, the rewards absolutely justify the risks. But you know, that's an analysis that really takes a lot of careful scrutiny, and it brings to mind the story about Pasquale, who was a devout Catholic of Italian descent, quite elderly and had a bad heart condition. He was bedridden, the poor guy, but he loved to play the lottery. His wife, Philomena, was also a devout Catholic of Italian descent, and she was very reluctant to give him any news of a disparaging or exciting nature. Unfortunately, he had just bought a lottery ticket that was $50 million winner, and she did not want to tell him about that. So she asked her son Antonio if he would tell him. He said, no, I'm not going to tell him that. Why don't you ask Father Guido? So she asked Father Guido, and he accepted the challenge. He would do that. And he came over to the house, and he got the lottery ticket from Philomena, and he went into Pasquale's bedroom, and he said, Pasquale, come stai? And he said, no, I'm feeling good, Father. He says, the priest said to him, I see you like to play the lottery. He says, oh, yeah. He says, I play the lottery every week. You know, it's $50 million this week, Father. He said, yeah, I know, but the odds are really against you from winning anything like that, Pasquale. What would you do anyway if you won the $50 million? And Pasquale said, Father, I give it all to you. The priest dropped dead. He would make a very good strict scrutiny of his risk-reward analysis. In any event, in addition to that, you not only have to do that, but one thing that you absolutely, positively need is support. You got to have support. You can't do anything with this type of a condition unless you have support. And I had a great deal of professional support from TGH, but before I get into that, there's a couple of all-star supporters that I have to mention. The number one all-star supporter that belongs in the Hall of Fame of supporters is my wife. On the 12th of February, when I was in that hotel